Hey there, real quick video. So I've been getting on Board Game Geek to, answer some questions regarding some timing issues that I've been personally thinking about with this game, and also some other issues that, other people brought up. And one of them really shocked me. And here's the revelation that I found out on Board Game Geek. So as you can see here, these are the time phases, and we did, this in the first video, and then we skipped this phase because the rulebook says we skip on turn 1, caravans 1.c.c and administration 2 are skipped. Okay, so 1.c.c is caravans, you can see that. So we skipped that, but we did everything else. And then I skipped all of 2, as you may recall. Well, the clarification on Board Game Geek is that you only skip 2A, the administration cards. So we were supposed to do income, purchases, and revolts. So had we done that, that meant that the Roman Empire would have gained income, and that means that when we did the nation activations, actually the events are up here. So the Romans would have gone bankrupt before they would have gained income. So I guess that part would not have been impacted. However, the Romans would have had a chance to get some income, and because they're in decline, they were forced to take a decline marker because of the bankruptcy, they would have a potential chance for a revolt. So we completely screwed up this playthrough. Well, I think we did. I don't want to delete the video because I think there's a lot of instruction. The steps that I did within this video series so far, I think are pretty sound, and I think they give you a really great feel for how this game plays. But we skipped a whole section of the game and jumped down to here. Like right now, I'm at the step where the Byzantine Empire is the only one that needs to go, and then we'd be done with the military phase. So I'm very likely going to start over. It's just that this is such an ambitious game and project. I can't, it's really hard for me to squeeze this in during a typical work night while I'm also trying to, be a parent and do other obligations in my life. So I sort of need a weekend, to really make some good ground. But that is my plan, is I think I'm going to start it over, largely because I don't know how to retcon that. I mean, I could just ignore it and keep playing, but that bothers me as well. So I think I might close this playthrough and then we'll just start a second one. And I'm going to leave these videos up because I still find them to be helpful for people. And if at some point maybe we get a good clean playthrough, I may come through and delete these, who knows. But even the comments that some of you made. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other ambiguities though. Oh, and let's talk about my gripe. My gripe is, it says 1.c.c. That's a very detailed thing. It didn't just say skip 1. This says skip 2, which means you skip all of 2. And if they wanted us to only skip 2A, they would have said 2A here. And in all honesty and transparency, I think the developer is overwhelmed with questions. And there's a part of me that thinks that he actually intended for all of this to be skipped, but then changed his mind when people started grilling him on Board Game Geek. I mean, that or this is just another error in the rule book, which there has been no errors in the actual rules. Now in the setup, that's a different story. There's been a lot of errors in the setup, but the rule book itself has been quite clean. Maybe not organized in a way that we want or things like that, but it's been quite clean, the rule book itself. And so this just seems like a really awful miss to not say 2A here. But right now that is the consensus, and somebody is compiling a list of errata, and this is making the list. And I'm not going to argue with it. There's just a part of me that's like a little doubtful because I thought the game played very smoothly skipping this step here. So with that said, what are some of the other things? Well, the first one was scoring. As you can see here, there's a scoring phase at the end, step 4 or phase 4. But you see here that there's an every turn scoring that occurs. So somebody asked, does that scoring occur here at the scoring phase, or does it occur when it happens? And the answer is both. Well, sort of both. This type of scoring with the skull occurs when it happens. These scoring with the red are the scoring that occurs at the end. So it's a little bit of both. So anything with the skull happens immediately. And because this was another question, and it was the exact question somebody asked, is if you have Sarmatia under control, which we didn't because I forgot about this, but let's say we did, we have a Horde faction here, and the Ostrogoths get points for controlling this region. Well, these guys go later in the game, and we migrated with them and moved to here. Well, now the Ostrogoths no longer control this region because there's 2 hordes in that region, so therefore they lose control. And yeah, ignore this for a second, but let's say that was the situation. Well, now the Ostrogoths are not going to get the 4 points. And so somebody wanted to know, when does that 4 points get scored? And I can show you exactly here that the Ostrogoths, well, actually this is right here on turn 1, 4 points for Balticum, Bartram, and Sarmatia. So this is one where if we wait until phase 4, they would not score the 4 points. And so, so what I just said was actually wrong. This scoring phase that's done every 3rd turn doesn't actually happen. The designer said that you would have scored those 4 points for controlling Sarmatia by the end of their turn, at the end of the faction's turn. So when the Ostrogoths finish their turn, they would do their scoring. So that way, when the next faction comes and goes, and they do something to mess with it, and then you get to the scoring phase, the Ostrogoths would no longer score those 4 points. And that frustrates me greatly, because what I had explained to you first, where these parts here should be during the phase 4, makes a lot more sense to me. It is frustrating also because there's a turn 1 scoring when this says it's every 3rd turn. There's a lot of weird contradictions in this game. And I posted on Board Game Geek that it is causing me to lose enjoyment of the game. And it's not because the game's not well designed. It's not because the game is not fun. I'm just getting frustrated because the rules are consuming me. And it shouldn't be that way. Rules should be clear. And if you've play tested a game 100 times, it should be very easy to know what the rules are. So that's my frustration. And I do also admit, I mean, like, I don't know this particular designer. I think he's a one-man shop, maybe running with his brother or something. I think this is a very ambitious project to try to do as a 2-person team. And so to see these kind of mistakes, I'm very forgiving and understanding, and I have a lot of compassion for that. I want to enjoy this game, hence the reason I'm doing the videos. So I want this to succeed, you know? And I know I also was a Kickstarter backer, so obviously you have that syndrome too, where Kickstarter backers just love the game even when they realize they just wasted their money. I don't feel I wasted my money. I just want to enjoy this game, and right now I can't, because every time I think I know a rule, I'm being told the opposite is true. And the victory point scoring is another one that's really, really bothering me. Now, when I did the playthrough, I actually scored their points at the end of their turn, which is what the developer said we're supposed to do. But it wasn't until somebody started pointing out that there's an actual scoring phase that I started to get frustrated and realize, you know what, that's probably the more accurate way to do it. However, it's not. And I also know that as a player, when it's your turn to take a turn and you control an area, you have no control over what happens when the next player gets to go. So I actually like the idea of you scoring at the end of your turn. But then what that means is this is not a phase 4, this is actually a 3C. Sorry. Or a 3A.C. That's really what it should be. So you do unit stacks, you do campaigns, and then this scoring phase gets inserted as a letter C right underneath nation activations. That is what this should be. So anyways, that's another rule thing. And then it's a timing question. Now, another one is, so let's talk about the cities here. These ones are real easy to tell because that's a Roman city. So you know that's a Roman city. There's no question about it. But let me just grab one here. Let's say I had a city here. Okay? So Serenica has a city. And let's say I had one lone archer protecting it. So I control that province, and I therefore also control that city. So now comes along an Alemanni, and they attack me, and they force me to retreat. So then they're now sieging the city that was once mine. And they fail, because it's a really difficult die roll. So they have to also retreat, because they fail. There's nobody in that city anymore. So what happens if I move back into the city that I have always controlled? According to the rules, it seems that I now have to siege that city as well. So we're both trying to siege the same city because this city like all of a sudden became a neutral city and doesn't have allegiance to either of us. That's sort of what it seems like. And there's a current, open question on Board Game Geek about this. And it's an interesting question. Because the other problem is that you can say, okay, well, who controls the whole area? Because the rule book also says that if you control an area, so this is part of Africa, for example. If I control Africa, it says you don't need a troop in every province. If you control the whole area, then it is assumed that you control every province within that area. So if I control all of Africa, and this city is neutral, then it is fair to assume that that city is always mine, even after I retreated. I think that's a very fair understanding of the rules. Now, the problem is if you're an empire, the way you control an area is you have to control the most cities. So that's another debate. What does it mean to control the most cities? So if an area has 1, 2, 3 cities in it, and you need to control the most cities, that means you need to control 2 of the 3 cities. That's one way to look at it. That's not the way I interpret it. The way I see it is it's who has the most cities compared to anybody else. And right now, just assume that this is a Roman unit. Rome controls this city here. Even though it's not a fortified city, it's still a city and they control it. The other 2 cities are not controlled by anybody because we got kicked out, right? So let's say this was a Rome. I'll grab a Roman one just to make it less confusing. So let's say this was a Roman unit, like that. Right, so now I'm controlling 2 of the cities, so I clearly have control of the area. Well, they kicked me out. I control 1 city, which is still more than anybody else. So I still control the entire area. And so that means I still control this city. So when they failed to siege the city, it's still in my control, and I can move my troops in, and I don't have to do a siege. I believe that that is the correct interpretation of these rules. But I have believed this like 12 times, and then I get the carpet swept underneath my feet. And that's the part that really frustrates me. Now, if I'm told that this interpretation is wrong, I'm going to probably house rule this game because I firmly believe that this is the right way to play this game. Me having to re-siege a city that was already mine in the first place is a little silly. Now, with that being said, let's say that the barbarians kicked me out of here, and let's say the barbarians kicked me out of here, and now I'm in a situation where none of the cities are controlled by anybody. Then, I agree, I need to re-siege those cities. And actually, in that situation, there's rules about kingdoms. Kingdoms would control it because it's who controls the most provinces. Empires have to control the most cities, and empires are top dog. So if they control the most cities, it doesn't matter how many provinces are under control by other players. The empire controls the area. So it's all about the cities and nothing else. But if there's no cities under control, then it turns into who controls the most provinces. Well, that's where kingdoms could win, and it's also where barbarians can win, right? So the barbarians could theoretically control this. I'd have to look up the rules to sort all that out. But That's a situation where if I were to move in here, I think I would have to re-siege the city because I lost all the cities, so therefore I lost control of the area. Once I lose control of the area, then I can no longer assume those cities are mine. That is just Jeff's opinion, and it's based on what the rules say. And then, as I noted, there's a lot of what the rules don't say, and that's what's the problem. The rules don't specifically address this situation, and that's some of the issues that we're running into. And then lastly, I'm very frustrated that there is not a way to keep track of all the diplomatic situations. So just in our playthrough alone, we the Persians stole the Armenian client from the Romans. The Ostrogoths ended up vassalizing at least one or two of those neutral states up there. Those are all things that I would like to be able to keep track of. And it would have been nice if we would have had tokens and maybe a spot on the board where we can keep track of, who's a client state to whom. And I come from an 18xx background, and those are things that we control all the time. Like you have a major train company and you have minor train companies, and this major train company controls these three minors, and we had a way to denote that. So anyways, that's just a feedback thing. It's not a rules issue. And I'm sure, and maybe it's a plea from me that I would love somebody on Board Game Geek to create a little player aid to allow us to facilitate that. Another thing that I realized is that I thought that all four of these factions belonged to the yellow, but look, it's very clear that there's a blue and a green. So those are minority factions that are actually controlled by blue and green, but they're on a yellow sheet. So it's just a hodgepodge there. But anyways, that's another clarification. So more to come. I haven't given up on this yet. I just want to know what I'm supposed to do and then do it. And I think the part I get frustrated with is I'm trying to get this out. I'm trying to move it forward. And then, of course, I'm running into some brick walls with understandings and so forth. But please forgive me, and I hope you're still finding this to be a valuable insight to the game. It has so much potential. And now that I've learned this a little bit more, on the next playthrough, I am going to look at the expansions to see if I can maybe incorporate those, because why not? Let's take a 400-hour game and make it 410. The other thing is I'm very interested in the advanced combat rules. So I think I'm going to flip to the advanced combat rules. And just a reminder, the advanced combat rules don't use white and black dice anymore. They're just using 2D D6s. And then just some modifiers, plus and minus. I think adding a white die and then upgrading it to a black and then removing the black is just a lot of unnecessary steps. I also don't like the whole hit and miss concept. I would rather just roll 2 D6s and live with it. So anyways, there you go. Thanks for watching. Stay awesome. And I would say sorry, but it's not that I misunderstood the rules. It's just things got clarified and it ruined our playthrough. So we'll start over and onward and upward. Right, folks? We'll see you later.